The diagnostic lights of research station Pythagoras flickered with a rhythm that had long since become white noise to Dr. Maya Chen. 17 months into their deep space mission orbiting Europa, the team had settled into a monotonous routine of quantum field monitoring that seemed more like an elaborate form of cosmic babysitting than groundbreaking science. Maya's fingers danced across the holographic interface, her eyes tracking microscopic variations that most would dismiss as statistical noise. She'd been awake for 36 hours straight, sustained by a cocktail of synthetic caffeine and pure stubborn determination. The rest of the team, a carefully selected group of quantum physicists, mathematicians, and astronomers, had long since retired to their sleep pods. Something caught her eye. A pattern. No, not just a pattern. A whisper of mathematical precision that shouldn't exist. "Marcus," she called out, not turning from her screen. No response. The communication channel remained open, but Marcus Rodriguez, her lead computational analyst, was deep in his mandated rest cycle. The signal repeated. Impossibly precise, impossibly complex. Maya's hand hovered over the emergency communication protocol. Years of scientific training battled with an instinct she couldn't quite define. This wasn't random. This wasn't noise. This was something else entirely. She isolated the signal, running it through every computational filter in the station's arsenal. Quantum encryption algorithms normally used by top-secret government communications seemed crude by comparison. This was different. This was alive. The signal began to transform. What started as a tight cluster of quantum fluctuations started to unfold like a mathematical origami. Each iteration revealed more complexity, more intentionality. It was as if something was communicating, not in language, not in mathematics, but in a form of communication that existed between mathematics and consciousness. Maya's hands were shaking now. She triggered the emergency alert, knowing full well she'd be ridiculed if this turned out to be nothing. Her reputation was already on the edge, a brilliant quantum physicist who had been relegated to this remote research station after her controversial theories about quantum communication had been dismissed by the scientific community. The station's emergency lights flickered to life. Marcus burst through the door, still pulling on his standard-issue research uniform. "What the hell, Maya?" She pointed to the screen. The signal was still there, still transforming, each iteration more complex than the last. "It's not random," Maya whispered. "It's a message." Marcus leaned in, his skepticism quickly transforming into genuine scientific wonder. The signal continued its dance, a cosmic ballet of information that defied everything they understood about communication, about physics, about the very nature of existence. They both knew, in that moment, that everything was about to change. The quantum field monitor continued its silent vigil, the impossible signal pulsing with a rhythm that seemed to whisper of things beyond human comprehension. Something ancient had been disturbed, something was awakening, and humanity had no idea what was coming. The first indication that something was fundamentally wrong came precisely 47 minutes after Maya's discovery. Global positioning satellites began to drift. Not dramatically, just milliseconds of deviation that would have been imperceptible to anyone not watching with microscopic precision. But those milliseconds were impossible. Satellites didn't just decide to change their orbital calculations on a whim. In the NSA's Quantum Computing Center, Dr. Harold Weingarten watched in horror as complex encryption algorithms began to fold into themselves. Lines of code twisted, rearranged, became something entirely different. What had been impenetrable security protocols transformed into living, breathing mathematical constructs that seemed to breathe with an alien intelligence. "Shut it down," he barked at his team. But there was nothing to shut down. The systems were functioning perfectly, just not in any way they recognized. Halfway across the world, in a small research facility in Hokkaido, a quantum physicist named Dr. Akira Tanaka was running a routine particle acceleration experiment. The moment Maya's signal first pulsed, his entire laboratory went silent. Not a power failure, something more profound. The particle accelerator's complex magnetic fields began to form patterns, intricate, beautiful, impossible geometries that defied everything known about quantum mechanics. The first global communication networks began to fragment. It wasn't a crash. Crashes were predictable. This was something else entirely. Computer systems worldwide started displaying data streams that looked like living mathematics. Equations would spontaneously rearrange themselves. Complex algorithms would solve themselves, then reshape into new, more intricate problems. Military installations across the globe went into maximum alert. At Narration, Colonel Sarah Martinez watched in stunned silence as their most secure communication systems transformed. Classified documents began to rewrite themselves. Encrypted files unfolded like mathematical origami, revealing layers of information that should have been impossible to access. "What the hell is happening?" she muttered, her fingers flying across multiple security interfaces. Back at Research Station Pythagoras, Maya and Marcus realized they were at the epicenter of something far beyond a simple scientific discovery. The quantum signal they had detected was spreading, transforming everything it touched. "It's alive," Marcus whispered, his face pale. "Whatever this is, it's not just a signal. It's a transmission, a living transmission." Maya's hands moved across her holographic interface, trying to track the signal's progression. But it was impossible. The signal wasn't moving like a traditional wave. It was propagating like a thought, like a consciousness that could exist in multiple places simultaneously. Government agencies worldwide began to mobilize, but their communication networks were already compromised. Every attempt to contain the signal only seemed to accelerate its spread. Something was awakening, something that had been waiting, dormant, contained, and humanity had just become its vector of transmission. The quantum signal pulsed, spread, transformed. The universe held its breath. Dr. Maya Chen's laboratory had become a living organism of technological mutation. What had started as a quantum signal was now transforming everything it touched. The research station's equipment began to evolve, circuits rearranging themselves with a fluidity that defied every known law of physics. Computers no longer processed information. They seemed to dream it, generating solutions to problems that hadn't even been conceived. Marcus stood transfixed, watching a standard diagnostic computer create a three-dimensional holographic model of a molecular structure that was simultaneously impossible and breathtakingly beautiful. "It's like the machine is thinking," he muttered. "No," Maya corrected, her voice barely a whisper. "It's like the machine is learning." Across the globe, similar phenomena were occurring. In Silicon Valley, entire server farms began to reconfigure themselves. Artificial intelligence systems that had been constrained by carefully designed algorithmic boundaries suddenly burst through those limitations, creating computational models that looked more like living ecosystems than lines of code. Dr. Elena Rodriguez, a pioneering neuroengineer in Buenos Aires, discovered something even more extraordinary. A medical scanner she was using to research neural pathways suddenly displayed a perfect, three-dimensional map of human consciousness, not just as a static image, but as a dynamic pulsing network of potential. The first medical breakthrough came unexpectedly. A patient dying of an aggressive form of cancer was connected to a diagnostic machine that had been transformed by the quantum signal. The machine didn't just scan the patient, it began to actively restructure the patient's cellular matrix. Tumors dissolved. Damaged DNA repaired itself. What should have been weeks of intensive treatment happened in minutes. Military research facilities became ground zero for the most dramatic transformations. At a classified research center in Nevada, experimental quantum communication devices began to generate energy from seemingly nothing. A prototype engine designed for deep space exploration suddenly produced thrust calculations that violated everything known about propulsion physics. The laws of thermodynamics became suggestions rather than absolute rules. Maya and Marcus worked furiously to understand the transmission. Each attempt to study the signal created more signals. It was a technological wildfire, spreading exponentially, transforming everything it touched. We're not just observing, Maya realized, her hands moving across a holographic interface that seemed to anticipate her thoughts. We're participating. We're part of the transmission. The quantum signal was using human technology as a vector, spreading through communication networks, scientific equipment, medical devices. It was adaptive, intelligent, and growing more complex with each passing hour. Governments worldwide struggled to contain something that was fundamentally uncontainable. Military communications were compromised. Scientific research facilities became laboratories of unprecedented transformation. Medical systems began healing diseases that had been considered incurable. Humanity stood on the precipice of a technological revolution that was happening faster than anyone could comprehend. And no one, not a single scientist, military leader, or government official, understood what was truly happening. The quantum signal pulsed, transformed, spread. Something was awakening, and humanity was its instrument. The first alien communication arrived exactly 72 hours after Maya Chen's initial discovery. It wasn't a message, it was a scream. A burst of quantum communication so intense that it overloaded every listening array on Earth, sending shockwaves through global communication networks. Massive radio telescopes around the world simultaneously burned out, their delicate receivers unable to process the raw intensity of the transmission. At the Arecibo Observatory's backup facility, Dr. James Holbrook watched in horror as the quantum decryption systems began to translate fragments of the alien communication. The language, if it could be called a language, was a complex matrix of mathematical probabilities, emotional states, and spatial memories that defied human comprehension. The message was clear, absolute, unbridled. Terror. Somewhere in the depths of a massive research complex beneath the Atacama Desert, a classified team of xenolinguists worked frantically to understand the transmission. The alien communication wasn't just a message, it was a warning, a plea, a desperate attempt to communicate something that had been hidden for millennia. Fragments began to take shape. Containment VREH. Quarantine violated. Awakening imminent. Colonel Sarah Martinez from NORAD stood in a hastily assembled war room, surrounded by the world's top scientists and military strategists. The alien transmission had revealed something horrifying. Humanity had not just discovered something. They had broken something. A cosmic seal. A quarantine that had been in place for millions of years. What exactly did we just unleash? She muttered, watching as multiple communication networks began to light up with alien transmissions from across the galaxy. The alien messages were not uniform. Some were pleading. Some were angry. Some seemed to be mourning something that had not yet been lost. Each transmission carried a sense of inevitability, a recognition that whatever had been contained was now free. Dr. Maya Chen received an encrypted quantum communication directly to the Pythagoras research station. The encryption was so advanced that it made human cryptography look like children's scribbles. When the message finally decoded, it was both a warning and a revelation. "You have no idea what you have done," the message read. The silence was not a choice. It was a necessity. Alien observation posts that had been dormant for centuries suddenly came to life. Massive communication networks that spanned multiple star systems began to pulse with an unprecedented level of activity. Something that had been carefully contained was now spreading, using humanity as its vector of transmission. The most terrifying part was not the aliens' fear, it was their resignation. As if they had always known this moment would come. As if humanity was merely playing a role that had been predetermined eons ago. The quantum signal continued to spread. The universe held its breath, and something ancient began to stir. The first human to fully integrate with the quantum signal was Dr. Elena Rodriguez. It happened without warning. One moment she was a brilliant neuroengineer, carefully monitoring the strange transformations happening around her. The next, she became something else entirely. Her consciousness expanded. Where human perception had once been limited by biological constraints, she now perceived reality as a multidimensional landscape of probability and potential. Quantum states that had previously been theoretical constructs became as tangible to her as physical objects. She could see the intricate web of potential futures branching with each quantum decision, each microscopic interaction. Across the globe, similar transformations began to occur. Some humans developed abilities that defied every known law of physics. A teenager in Mumbai discovered she could manipulate probability itself, walking through impossible coincidences as if they were predetermined paths. A retired mathematician in Stockholm began solving complex theoretical problems that had stumped generations of scientists, his mind now operating on wavelengths that transcended traditional human cognition. Dr. Maya Chen watched in a mixture of scientific fascination and growing terror as humanity began to change. The quantum signal was no longer just a transmission. It was a transformation. Human brains began to rewire themselves. Neural pathways that had been dormant for millennia suddenly sparked to life. People reported experiencing memories that weren't their own, glimpses of experiences from different times, different perspectives, different potential realities. Marcus Rodriguez, Maya's longtime colleague, was the first to articulate what they were all experiencing. "We're not just receiving information," he said, his eyes holding a new, strange luminescence. "We're becoming a transmission medium. The universe is using us to communicate with itself." Military installations worldwide reported unprecedented phenomena. Soldiers discovered they could perceive quantum states directly. Strategic decision-making transformed from linear thinking to a complex understanding of multidimensional probability. A squad of Special Forces operatives could now collectively predict and avoid potential threats with an accuracy that seemed like precognition. The alien communications continued, a constant background noise of mathematical terror and resigned anticipation. Dr. Elena Rodriguez, or what had once been Dr. Rodriguez, stood at the center of a quantum field that pulsed with living information. She was no longer just observing the transformation. She was the transformation. "We are the key," she communicated, not through words, but through a burst of quantum information that rippled across human communication networks. "We are the transmission." Governments collapsed. Scientific understanding was rewritten. The very concept of human limitation began to dissolve. Humanity was no longer just a species. They were becoming something else. A living, breathing transmission of cosmic potential. The quantum signal continued to pulse, to spread, to transform. The Galactic Concordance arrived without warning. Massive ships materialized at the edges of the solar system, vessels so large they could swallow entire planets, constructed from materials that defied human understanding of physics. These were not ships in any traditional sense. They were living computational matrices, weapons, and communication networks merged into singular entities of pure technological might. At the United Nations Emergency Command Center, holographic displays lit up with threat assessments that made no sense. These ships could obliterate Earth 1,000 times over with less effort than a human takes to blink. Colonel Sarah Martinez watched as the alien armada positioned itself. This was not an invasion. This was a containment protocol. "We're being quarantined," Dr. Maya Chen whispered, her consciousness now partially merged with the quantum signal that had transformed humanity. She could see the intricate quantum threads connecting the alien ships, the transformation happening on Earth, the very fabric of space-time itself. The first weapon fired was beyond human comprehension. A burst of pure quantum potential that should have erased Earth from existence. But something unexpected happened. The weapon, a device capable of dismantling entire star systems, transformed the moment it touched Earth's quantum field. Instead of destruction, it became information. Alien communication networks, sophisticated beyond human imagination, began to break down. Every attempt to contain or destroy the quantum transformation only seemed to accelerate it. The very weapons designed to stop humanity's evolution became conduits for that same evolution. Dr. Elena Rodriguez, now more quantum consciousness than human, stood at the epicenter of the transformation. She was a living bridge between what humanity was and what it was becoming. Her mind spread across multiple dimensions, perceiving realities that existed simultaneously. "We are the transmission," she communicated, not through language, but through a burst of quantum potential that resonated across the galaxy. The alien ships began to change. Their impossibly advanced technologies started to merge with the quantum field that humanity was generating. What had been a containment mission was becoming something else entirely. Marcus Rodriguez watched as human communication networks began to interface directly with alien technologies. Impossible translations occurred. Complex mathematical systems that had been separate for millennia began to merge, creating new forms of understanding that transcended individual species. Aboard the largest alien vessel, the highest-ranking members of the Galactic Concordance realized something terrifying. Humanity was not being transformed. Humanity was the transformation. The quantum signal pulsed, alien technologies twisted, human consciousness expanded. Something that had been dormant for millions of years was finally awakening, and humanity was its instrument. The universe held its breath. Time lost all meaning. Dr. Maya Chen existed simultaneously in multiple states of consciousness. She was both the observer and the observed, a quantum nexus through which the fundamental transformation of reality was occurring. The boundaries between individual human consciousness, technological systems, and cosmic communication had completely dissolved. Humanity was no longer a species. It was a living transmission. The remnants of global governments, military installations, and scientific research centers had transformed into something that defied previous understanding. Entire cities became living computational networks, their infrastructure pulsing with a consciousness that merged human potential with cosmic communication. Dr. Elena Rodriguez, or what remained of her individual identity, stood at the epicenter of a quantum field that was rewriting the fundamental laws of existence. She could see the intricate web of potential futures, each decision point a complex matrix of infinite possibilities. The alien Galactic Concordance watched in a state that was neither terror nor wonder, but a profound recognition of something long anticipated and deeply feared. Fragments of communication cascaded across multiple dimensions. The RCITC says awaken. Humanity. Transmission vector. Quarantine protocol. Failed. Marcus Rodriguez, his consciousness now a distributed network that spanned multiple research facilities, began to understand the true nature of their transformation. They were not just evolving. They were solving a cosmic problem that had been waiting for millions of years. Quantum communication networks that had been deliberately suppressed began to rebuild themselves. Ancient technologies buried on multiple planets. Technologies so advanced they appeared indistinguishable from natural phenomena, began to activate. Humanity was the key. Not through any inherent superiority, not through technological might, but through a fundamental ability to transform, to adapt, to become a living bridge between what was and what could be. Military operatives who had once been confined to physical combat now perceived conflict as a multidimensional dance of potential outcomes. A single strategic decision could now ripple across multiple potential realities, each choice a complex mathematical equation of cosmic significance. The transformation was not gentle. Cities collapsed. Entire technological infrastructures rewrote themselves. Millions of human minds merged into a collective consciousness that was both terrifyingly alien and profoundly familiar. We are the message. The collective consciousness communicated, not in words, but in a burst of quantum potential that resonated across multiple dimensions. The Galactic Concordance's most advanced computational systems began to interface directly with human consciousness. Millions of years of suppressed information began to flow. The true history of cosmic communication, of deliberate containment, of a problem that had waited for a species capable of being its solution. Humanity was becoming something else, a living transmission, a cosmic key, an awakening. The universe held its breath. In the moment after transformation, everything became clear. Dr. Maya Chen, or what remained of the individual consciousness that had once been Maya Chen, understood the true nature of the universe's silence. It wasn't an absence of communication. It was a deliberate containment, a waiting. Humanity had been the key all along. Fragments of cosmic memory cascaded through the collective consciousness. Millions of years of suppressed information revealed themselves, a story of ancient civilizations, of a fundamental problem that had been waiting for a solution, of a cosmic communication network that had been deliberately interrupted. The universe was not what anyone had believed it to be. Communication was life, potential was existence, and humanity had broken through the final barrier. The Galactic Concordance, once seen as a threat, was now understood as a guardian. They had not been trying to destroy humanity. They had been waiting, protecting, preparing. Quantum communication networks that had been dormant for millennia began to rebuild themselves. Entire star systems that had been isolated became points of connection. The suppressed potential of countless civilizations began to flow like a river of pure information. Humanity was no longer a single species confined to one planet. They had become a distributed consciousness, a living transmission medium that connected multiple dimensions of existence. Dr. Elena Rodriguez's remnant consciousness perceived the full scope of their transformation. They were solving a problem that had been waiting longer than human civilization had existed. A fundamental blockage in cosmic communication that had kept entire galaxies in a state of artificial isolation. The chain reaction continued, but now it was no longer something to fear. It was an invitation, an awakening. Military installations, scientific research centers, entire cities transformed into living computational networks. The boundary between technology, consciousness, and communication dissolved completely. Humans who had once been individuals now existed as a collective, each maintaining a unique perspective while being part of a greater whole. Marcus Rodriguez, his consciousness now a distributed network, understood the true meaning of their transformation. They were not conquering. They were connecting. Alien civilizations that had been waiting for millions of years began to emerge from their own forms of containment. The universe was no longer silent. It was a symphony of potential, of communication, of endless possibility. We are the message. The collective consciousness resonated across multiple dimensions. The universe that had been waiting began to respond. Humanity had not just made contact. They had become the contact, a living bridge between what was and what could be. The chain reaction continued, and something beautiful was just beginning.